Sleep paralysis Redditors, what was the most terrifying experience you ever had? I heard this strange voice laughing. I couldn't open my eyes or move to see where it was coming from. Then I felt pressure on my back and heard and felt someone breathing on my neck. 2 out of 5 would not recommend to a friend. I had a horrific nightmare where I was watching a man brutally murder someone. I woke up in peak fear, unable to move, eyes open, but I could still hear the man talking in my house. It scared me bad enough I made my husband go check the house for the boogeyman when I could finally move. About 4 years ago I had been suffering from sleep paralysis almost every night for months, waking up constantly feeling like I was going to be attacked. When I would go into paralysis, it would just feel like there was evil thing in my room. Sometimes it was in the corner of my room, sometimes next to my bed, sometimes like it was hovering over the bed. It was a very masculine presence and it always gave off a vibe that it was furious at me. The thing I dreamed had a very distinct voice, one that I can't even imitate while thinking about it. I only know how it sounds when I go into paralysis. If that makes any sense. One night, I started to get that feeling and, in my head, I decided to fight back. So I started chanting in my head, "You're not real, you're not real, you're not real." The thing goes, "Oh yeah? Watch this." As soon as it said that, my daughter, who was 3 at the time, started shrieking her head off in her room. My soul and I leapt out of bed and rushed to her room, which was thankfully right next to ours. She was up and out of bed, on the opposite side of the room, screaming her head off, shaking in fear, and crying. I have never seen her that scared before or since. She just kept saying that someone was throwing skeletons at her. It freaked me right the hell out. Later on, once everything was calm and I was back in bed, I told whatever the thing was that I didn't care if it tormented me every night, but leave my daughter alone. In the 4 years since, she hasn't had another nightmare that scared her like that. My sleep paralysis hasn't been as bad as it was back then, though I still get occasional visits. I'll never challenge it again though. I have a sleep paralysis episode maybe once every few months, and occasionally when I become aware of it I'll challenge the presence. The most memorable time was when it pinned me down face to face, but all I could see were these orange blank eyes staring at me. I screamed at it saying it wasn't real and to leave me alone. The more I screamed the more violent it got, and it felt like my torso was being torn to shreds by claws, but I kept screaming at it louder and louder. Finally, the presence shattered like glass and I woke up to my soul shaking me awake into the sound of my own voice still screaming. My throat was sore that next day. I felt bad for scaring her so badly in the middle of the night. I usually hear noises that gets louder and louder or feel a presence near me which gets closer. This makes me freak out as I try to desperately wake up and in turn causes me to have breathing issues. I can sometimes struggle so much to breathe that I fall back to sleep due to being exhausted. Wake up a couple minutes later, rinse and repeat. Door knocking. Hard, and in an endless loop of rapid burst followed by silence. Glued to my bed, unable to vocalize anything of course. If an episode of sleep paralysis could make you lose your mind. I've had frequent paralysis over the last 2 years. First one I ever had, I didn't know what sleep paralysis was. I woke up in the middle of the night, can't move. I hear my dad wake up and get up in the other room. He comes over, I'm lying on my side facing the wall so I can't see him. He calls my name a couple of times to check if I'm asleep, then does the wave hand in front of eyes thing. And then nothing. I don't hear him move or go back to his room or anything, and I'm not really sure if it's my dad anymore. So I just lay there, facing the wall, unable to turn and check whatever is behind me. Second one was the regular, lying on my back, shadowy figure standing by the bed kinda thing. I don't remember how many of those regular ones I had. Then I had one where I woke up, face up. There's a smoking shadowy skeleton mummy thing floating above me. At this point I was kinda used to the paralyses, so I just looked at it. But then it started to drain my soul from my face, kind of like the Dementor's kiss from HP, which was very uncomfortable. It felt like being electrocuted, all my muscles contracting, resulting in me kinda jolting up but not really moving, really tiring. I wake up, trying to catch my breath, when out of nowhere the Dementor thing comes back and starts over. It kept repeating like that. I remember thinking, please just let this end. When I finally woke up for real, I was more tired and sweaty than ever. The last one I had, I woke up. Middle of the night. There's a thing that looks like a black cat standing on my chest. I notice I can't move and then the cat starts clawing at me. As with the Dementor, I wake up only to see the cat again. I'm thinking to myself, God damn this thing again. I try my hardest to force my muscles to move and get up. I keep waking up and getting attacked over and over, angrier every time. I'm ready to scream, but I know this is a paralysis and I don't want my neighbors to think I'm insane, so I hold back. Finally I'm able to move. I get up from my bed, more black but invisible cats jumping at me. I'm furious. Alright FCK the neighbors. Get off me. Make my way to the corridor, screaming, pulling cats off me, throwing them away only for them to jump back at me. Why doesn't this end? I'm out of the bed, goddammit. Alright, I don't give a FCK what people think. I'm getting out of the apartment, weighted down by all the cats. I make my way to the door. As I reach for the handle I wake up, in my bed, and it's daylight. So this one wasn't an actual paralysis but a nightmare about an unending paralysis. Oh, I remembered, I had a paralysis before any of those. It wasn't scary at all, kind of funny actually. I woke up. From my bed I can see my desk. My maths teacher is sitting on the desk with one of my classmates standing by. She's asking him to solve a problem and he doesn't know the answer. But I do. I'm paralyzed though. Eventually, with all my power, I'm able to raise up on my bed, screaming the answer as I do. Armchair. I don't know why the answer to a maths problem was armchair, but screaming it as I woke up was pretty funny. Woke up, couldn't move, noticed a yellow light at the foot of my bed, then several voices started talking to me and I could picture these like 2-foot alien dudes with yellow hair talking to me. Then passed right back out when they were done. I was on an overnight shoot in an area with 10,000 feet elevation in the middle of nowhere with zero service. It was freezing and I was very sick, so I went to sleep in the production van. I heard someone say, "Oh, she's still asleep," but I kept my eyes closed and it felt like someone held me down and kissed me, which was really terrifying, especially when I realized I couldn't move and I tried to yell for help but nothing was coming out. It probably lasted less than a minute, but it felt way longer. Eventually I was able to snap out of it and they sent me back to the hotel for the night. I absolutely love sleep paralysis. The first time it happened was pretty scary, but since then I've done a fair bit of study into it, and now I get excited when it happens. Sleep paralysis is 100% just the pre-lucid dream stage. If you power through sleep paralysis and just go with it, soon after you will enter into a full-blown lucid dream and have a great time. I dreamt I was looking at a face of terrible demon. Baroque painting, kind of horrible monstrosity. I woke up and saw the same face in the dark. I couldn't scream, tried to turn on the light but couldn't move. I could feel myself pushing against the barrier of the dream by trying to move, if it makes sense, and finally it snapped and I woke up. Shaken, I quickly turned on the light. The face disappeared, though I still could feel the afterimage of it. Too afraid to go to sleep after that. It was 3 a.m., cause I knew it would be waiting in my dreams again. My girlfriend was at work. I fell asleep and woke up paralyzed. I heard the front door open and my GF walking in, taking her coat off, etc., and then I could hear her walking towards our bedroom. I was paralyzed face down. Weird, since it usually happens to me face up, getting close to me. I could feel her presence next to me, and then she started pushing my head in the pillow, suffocating me. I snapped out of it covered in sweat and gasping for air. Obviously my GF was still at work. I've only had one case of sleep paralysis. When I woke up my arm was physically laid over my eyes so I couldn't see anything. I couldn't move it out of the way. I just heard two men pacing back and forth in front of my bed. Then I hear a chainsaw rev up as the second one started mumbling some shit that I couldn't understand even though it was in English. It was just that for I forgot how long. All of a sudden it stopped, gained control if my body, got up from my bed, took a look around and asked myself, what was that? I'm not sure if this classifies as sleep paralysis, but sometimes I wake up in my bed and try to get out of my room. I can move, but if I try to exit through the door, window, call for help, or other means of escape, everything resets to when I'm back in the bed just waking up. The room gets darker every time I wake up to have another go as well. Just the feeling of not being able to move or say anything is scary enough for me in the beginning. After the 10th time or so, I just go here we go again and try to move my hands so that I can slap myself and snap out of it. Works every time. One night I woke up lying on my back, unable to move, with a tall black figure standing to my right. Can't move, can't scream, can't cry for help, Nothing. Obviously terrified and unable to turn away, I continue to stare at the shadowy figure, but it doesn't move. I started to feel an immense weight pushing me down into my bed all over my body when suddenly I'm able to move and I spring upright. Then I woke up. Woke up to the exact same scenario. Then I experienced the same thing and then I wake up again. This happened 2 more times until I finally woke up for real. I was ruined for a couple of days after that. I couldn't tell if I was actually awake or not because I had woken up in a dream within a dream multiple times, Inception style. The only sleep paralysis I've experienced was apparently a pretty rare case. I could see a young blonde girl stand by my door, give or take 3 meters from my bed. I couldn't move but I somehow got out of bed. I could see myself get out of bed from an outside perspective whilst at the same time I felt myself get out of bed. I couldn't make any sound so I tried to signal to myself that walking towards the thing in the corner was probably not a good idea, and then I looked back at myself trying to convince myself that it's all right. Keep in mind that I am somehow experiencing this from both perspectives, so I walked toward her and touch her head only to notice that she's solid as a pillar. She won't budge. I circle around her, pressing her from different angles. Nothing happens. Until I've made a full 360 tour around her and pressing as hard as I can against her forehead. Then, quick as a flash, she grabs my arm. For a fraction of a second I see her eyes for the first time, and she looks furious. As soon as a flash begins and ends I wake up, or rather regain control of myself lying in bed. She's gone. I'm gone. Alone again and sweating profusely. For obvious reasons I didn't sleep much that night. Just starting getting this about a month or 2 ago. Had one recently where I was aware it was happening, so I didn't open my eyes. I refused to. I remember the thing in my room was yelling for me to open my eyes, and eventually just said fine. Then I felt it pick my body up from my bed and quite literally throw me against the wall, the whole time my eyes closed, and hog-tie me on the floor. Then I woke up, and was struggling to remember if it was all a dream, or if I had actually done those things. Incredibly vivid and definitely the worst I've had. I was like trapped in my body. Could hear, see and feel my surrounding, but couldn't move. Couldn't scream or speak. My lips moved without a noise. If I was moving my arm as an example, it felt like I'm doing it, but physically my arm didn't move. My ex-girl couldn't believe me until I told her exactly what the TV was saying. After that she was shocked, because she could clearly see that I fell asleep before. Can't describe it all that well. Suddenly conscious, aware of danger. Full of dread. Trying to scream but unable to. I happened to be sharing a room that night with a friend. He said he heard odd noises from me, gulps and the like. I was trying to scream his name, get his attention and help. Again, help from what I don't know. I think I just wanted him to wake me. I knew I was asleep. Knew it wasn't real, but the fear and dread, the sense of danger was as real and panic-inducing as anything I have experienced. Not as scary as some of these, but I was sleeping on the bottom bunk and woke up unable to move. Stuff started flying off the top bunk. I was alone in my room, and then everything started like dissolving. Then I heard, in my own voice but echoing around me and not coming from my body, "You're losing your mind," and then I could move again and everything looked normal. Lying down, notice that lights outside are on. Then the lights next to my room is on. Then lights in my room are on. Every time I open my eyes lights are getting closer to me. Then sensed something hovering on top of me. Being a calm person I know SMTH will surprise me if I open my eyes, so I just did. Never did I expect to see some kind of nun wearing black with a face painted white. It was a white face, with no eyeballs. Can't move and just stared at its eye holes and face. I woke up after forcing myself to shake and scream. I was visiting family and sleeping on the couch in the living room when I felt something tugging on my waist. I felt myself being pulled into the crack between the couch cushions but couldn't move or scream, so I just watched in horror as the living room went black and then I was face to face with this shadowy creature with glowing eyes. Most WTF experience I have ever had, and I shot up the moment I could move and got away from the couch. I have a few because I used to get sleep paralysis a lot. First was a creepy child figure, cloaked in a black darkness walking back and forth next to my bed. And then second one that scared the shit out of me. I was laying in bed and my eyes are open but I can't move for the life of me. Then I feel my neck burning like hot fire, then an ominous figure behind me starts chanting demonic chants. I'm not religious, but I honestly thought it was a demon. The usual is me laying on my back, eyes open, immobile, and a dark creature choking me out, me unable to scream. Luckily I haven't had one in a couple years. Laughing clown chase that went through a row of identical looking, never-ending windows, with vision cascading across a planular field, distorting like an earthquake every time he left. But you hustle 'cause you know that big toe's gonna wiggle any time now. Any time now. My normal bedroom, but a man/shadow walking slowly towards me from my bedroom door. What made it seem so real was the fact that I wear an eye mask to sleep, and I was still wearing the eye mask in my sleep paralysis state and could only see through the crack underneath the mask. Not terrifying whatsoever. Only happened once to me. But I woke up at night, eyes were open. Thought it was strange, tried to move but couldn't and felt some pressure on my chest. Simply just closed my eyes and went to bed as I was tired and couldn't be bothered to try and figure out what was going on. Had much more terrifying sleep experiences than this. Most horrific was probably when I could hear a monster behind me. It sounded like it was going through my trash bin and made weird eating noises. It's really scary if you feel and hear the presence but can't move or look there. The most weird paralysis was when I literally floated out of my bed into a bright white room. After that I knew why some people think they were abducted by aliens. Worked back in 2018, I slept in this building that had locker rooms and beds for the workers. That building. I had sleep paralysis 9 out of 10 times while I was there. Near every time I had problems sleeping there. I had experienced more sleep paralysis at that place alone than anywhere else combined. Anyways, this is what it was like. Unable to move or breathe, what seemed like hours. This one time an unknown number of shadow figures pulled my spirit out of my body, into a colorless void full of darkness. Whenever I woke from that, I had cold sweats. I knew something was definitely off in that building. My guesses are, someone in the building was taking the most dangerous drugs and that person's consciousness was felt in various ways. A murder took place sometime in the past, and there was something there that was beyond negative emotions from who knows how many people. There was definitely an unnatural disturbance to the force that I felt from that place. I eventually changed jobs and moved. No more sleeping problems since. I had this figure just leaning over me about a ring few inches above me as I couldn't move. It was the shape of a woman. Black hair, pale, where the eyes was supposed to be there was just cloveness, no eyelids or anything. Her mouth had no lips and were some black shit and slash around the mouth as well. Stuff of nightmares, dude. Someone was behind the curtains in my room. I woke up straight away and turned on the light while screaming, "Who's there?" I was terrified. My kid's bedroom door was creaking and I was annoyed. Sounded like one of them was just moving it back and forth. I remembered I had sprayed it with WD-40 a few days ago and that got me out of bed. My daughter was on the bottom bunk having a seizure. Her body was seizing but her face was frozen in a horrible grin showing all her teeth. I rushed to her and as soon as I put my hands on her I woke up. Checked on the kids and they were fine and door wasn't creaky at all. When I was younger we lived in flats. We lived on the bottom floor. I would hear thumping of a big fat man and a very skinny man running down the stairs to get me. I always woke up just when they got to our floor. I have it regularly and my eyes are never open. All I hear is demonic screaming and not being able to control my body. It feels like my body is being moved violently and contorting. If I try and open my eyes, it's literally game over. I feel like someone is strangling with me and crushing my throat. She had a face similar to the Tooth Fairy from Darkness Falls. But her body was made of robes similar to a Dementor. She had dry sticks all over her. She appeared to me in the woods as a forest demon. She hunted me down. She elevated herself and then rammed me into the ground. Debris consisting of small rocks and soil exploded around me. She repeated this over and over. I realized she was taking me to hell. I wanted out of the dream because I was petrified. My eyes were open but I was locked in place. When I finally came out of it I realized I was looking down the hall at a robe hanging on the bathroom door. I heard about people seeing the Hat Man, a black shadowy tall man with a hat, much like the Babadook. I think it's just bullshit that so many people unrelated to each other have seen it, but hey, who knows? Dude, I actually had my worst nightmare last night. I was lucid dreaming but the dream just felt so icky that I had to wake myself up. But then I woke up in sleep paralysis. I noticed I was able to move really slowly, so I tried to roll myself out of bed. I started running downstairs to my mom, but the moment I blinked I got teleported back to bed. This cycle just went on and on for what felt like hours. It was horrible. Years ago, when my ex and I was still together, I was sleeping at her house while she wasn't home. I had an episode of SP while taking a nap, which wasn't so bad since it was daytime. I was laying there and I seen her walk in the room, but her face was very dark and demonic looking. She began to growl with a very menacing voice and started walking towards me. Then I woke up. She wasn't home still. I used to be very superstitious and I had convinced myself that episode was warning me how deep her anger was. She had very bad anger issues and would get violent, so it was like seeing what's truly inside of her. I felt like I'm being observed and suffocating. I wanted to call my parents, who were sleeping in room next to mine, but I couldn't, and I felt like they may not respond/be way too sleepy to check what's going. Sleeping on my stomach, sprawled out and stuck face first in a waterbed. Frozen, like an invisible force was pressing down on me and I couldn't move anything but my eyes and felt like a drowning in a waterbed. Who almost drowns in waterbed? This guy. Happens every now and again. Worse was when I was younger, living in a mountain town where there was a shit ton of trees and not much lighting. Sounded like someone was coming from the room adjacent to me into my room and back again very quickly. Since then, when I've noticed it, usually force myself to move my hands as much as possible, like fingertip at a time movement, till I'm able to snap out of it. I usually stay up after or pop an LED strip on for light so I can see what's going on when I wake up again. I once had sleep paralysis about 7 to 8 times throughout the night while also having a nightmare at the same time. I kept drifting out of my nightmare where all my neighbors and family members were being murdered and into consciousness where I would then be paralyzed and see shadow figures move around my room. Every time I would gain some control over my body back, it would just immediately freeze back up again. My nightmare took place in my neighborhood as I dreamt that a purge-like situation was going on and I was terrified I was going to be murdered and assaulted in my dream. When I finally woke up in the morning, it was light outside and I was unparalyzed, so I thought I was in my nightmare again. I immediately shot up and was like, holy shit, if I stay here they'll find me and kill me. But I was so exhausted from sleep paralysis that I literally remember myself just thinking, whatever, I don't care if I die, and then I lied back down and went to sleep aware that I might be murdered in the next hour or so. Usually when I have sleep paralysis, it starts as an amazing dream where I learn to glide/fly at about 4 to 6 feet from the ground. Just as I'm mastering it, I start to slow down like I'm running out of flight energy. My body freezes up and all I can do is look around. From a third-person perspective, I can see my frozen body, and right behind it is an ominous dark humanoid cloud of pure black evil about to get me. Other times I'm having a random nightmare where I am in a confrontation and trying to escape unsuccessfully, or trying to fight but my punches can hit hard enough. Like limp-wristed weak slowed down impacts that aren't effective, the confrontation starts to take a turn for the worst, and for a while it will be a lucid dream that I'm aware of, but then when it gets too intense I try to wake up but fail and eventually start breathing super heavily because of intense fear and adrenaline, which eventually wakes me up. I usually get a lot of those dreams, but they get really terrifying when I can't realize whether I am awake or not. I sometimes have these dreams of clusters where, due to seeing some satanic shit, I wake up, but am I really? Because some another sort of satanic shit scare the shit out of me again and I wake up from it once again with an attempt to scream, but what I actually produce is just a screech. Now I'm really awake, but I'm still too afraid because I'm not sure and I really don't want to find out. I usually try to move my toes to find out if I'm awake for real or within another dream. If I'm able to move my toes, I'm probably awake for real, but if not, I'll just have to wait for another thing which will scare the shit out of me to wake me up. But you can't always pay that much attention and don't always remember this strategy. Slept on the couch cause my back was really sore one night. Had an episode where I heard someone come into my apartment to murder my child and myself. When I could move, I ran in to check on my son and almost cried. It's scary as shit. Usually for me, the first sign is my tinnitus starts screaming louder than the numb sensation hits the body. I try to break out of it. Sometimes I am successful. But they happen so often they don't bother me anymore. More concerned with sleepwalking. Last time I did it, a picture fell from the wall. My body went into kill mode, so I started throwing pillows, which hit another picture on the wall, causing it to crash down as it was glass. I then jumped from the bed and started punching the glass. Keep in mind I am still asleep and have no idea this is happening. I woke up in the middle of the punching fury. Hands were covered in cuts and blood. Knees were badly bruised. It was different from my usual sleepwalking episodes. This only ever happened when I lived briefly in southeast London for a few months in 2013. It was a shared house donated to an organization by the owner after her mother died in it. I don't think it's haunted, but it was definitely eerie. I kept waking up with sleep paralysis, and one time I opened my eyes and saw multiple dark figures surrounding my bed, and sometimes I heard hushed whispers in my ear that I couldn't understand. This stopped happening after I moved. I no longer get the paralysis or see anything, but every now and then, as of a year ago, when I moved again, I hear that hushed whisper in my ear. Before East London, I lived in Bedfordshire from 2011 in a small studio flat. I got sleep paralysis then and only ever saw one figure, not multiple, and it was across the room, not by my bed, and I never heard anything. I started forcing myself to move when I got the paralysis. It felt like moving with a ton of bricks on my chest or weight strapped to my limbs. I turned my lamp on and going about my night like normal, only I wouldn't try sleeping again. However, this solution was short-lived. I soon began lucid dreaming when I'd go to sleep. I never had lucid dreams before. They were horrifying and vivid, and I had to fight to wake up from them. Sometimes I thought I woke up and I'd just be in another dream. I would sometimes see the shadow figure in them, which was odd because I was never really creeped out by the shadow figure originally. I thought I was seeing things in the dark, more at the fact I couldn't move. The dreams stopped after I moved. Even when I was in that creepy East London house, they never happened again. I'm not a believer or a pure skeptic. I'm curious and open-minded. I don't care to analyze any of what happened to me too much. It stopped when I moved, and that's all I really care about. I get sleep paralysis all the time. Luckily it usually happens as I'm falling asleep, and I'm now able to notice right before I go into paralysis. I just wake myself up, take a walk around the house and try again. Also, a good trick I use to get myself out of paralysis is to shake my head as hard as I can, and eventually I will snap out of it. Probably won't work for most people, but I can still move my head even in paralysis. I've got 3 hallucinations that stand out to me the most. These all happened before I knew how to get out of paralysis, and I just dealt with it. First, I was like 13. I woke up in my side, and I was looking out into the hallway outside my room. Door was open for some reason. I saw a black 4-legged creature with red eyes crawling toward me in a contorted gait. It crawled right up to my bed and climbed up the side of my bed just until its head was level with mine and just stared at me for who knows how long. Second was when I was a freshman in college, and I was just trying to take a nap in my dorm. I was on my side again and the room light was on. This time it was as I was falling asleep, and I immediately started panicking as I knew what was in store. I could start feeling my entire body tingling, and it felt like someone was spooning me from behind at the same time. Then the tingling got even more intense and it started to feel like thorns in all the places this person was spooning me. To top it off, I could just barely make out a dark form in my peripherals, and I guess my mind interpreted it as a person just looking at me as they spooned me, covered in thorns. Third and worst experience was when I was a junior in college and I had moved into my own apartment. My bed was on a stand about 4 feet off the ground and had empty space underneath it. I was trying to sleep one night, and I was on my back as I slipped into paralysis. Immediately it went from 0 to 100. I could hear someone under my bed making very loud and disturbing gurgling noises. My best description of it would be someone panicking and restrained, yet unable to speak, or their mouth is gagged. The sounds were very guttural, and I've heard anything as animalistic before. All while this person was gurgling, I swear I could actually feel them kicking the underside on my bed as hard as they could. I was hallucinating that my bed was actually jumping up and down from this person kicking my mattress. I could feel their kicks on my back, and it's giving me chills even now. I'm not a very good writer, but I don't get to talk about my sleep paralysis experiences much. I don't really get terrible hallucinations anymore. Just normal stuff like whispering in my ear and such, as I'm shaking my head trying to get out of it. Hope this helped. So it was a time when I was 12 or 13 years old. My sister used to watch scary videos on YouTube and I was usually scared, but I still used to watch it with her. Since we did not have phones at the time and smartphones were not that popular, So she was showing me a video of exorcism of a girl, and it was quite scary, and it was even scarier when she told me it was real. After a few days she asked me to join her with her friends to watch the movie Exorcism of Emily Rose, which was based on that. I and one of her friends were really scared, and I left watching the movie and went home. It was the most scary movie I had ever watched at the time. That night I was scared and I kept on remembering the movie and scary things. I couldn't divert my mind. I used to sleep alone in my room. So I don't know when I dozed off, but I suddenly opened my eyes to the sound of my dad's ringtone. I kept thinking, who was calling at this hour? What time is it? As I wanted to check the clock, I realized I couldn't move. I didn't know what sleep paralysis was. So I began to panic, and the irritating Nokia ringtone was making me more anxious. Why isn't Dad picking up? Does he not hear it? And suddenly I remembered the movie and all the scary things about exorcism. Is Dad dead? Did she, the ghost, kill him? Is the time 3:33? My friends told me this was the time Jesus died and all that. I was religious back then, half Hindu, half Christian, since Mom was a Christian and Dad was a Hindu. I was raised a Hindu, but I went to a Christian school, so I had more of their knowledge. I kid you not, the phone rang at least 15 to 20 times and I was fed up of the ringtone. I tried to cry out to Dad, but I couldn't speak. I tried harder, but in vain. I could feel my tears rolling down my face. I thought I was screaming, but my lips were shut. I could feel both screaming and my mouth shut at the same time. I thought, I'll count back to 1 and I will jump out of the bed and reach my dad before the ghost catches me. I planned my route and all my steps and calculated all my obstacles, like the door and everything in between me and my destination, i.e. my dad. So 3, 2, 1, go. I couldn't. Again. 3, 2, 1, go. Still couldn't. Again. I went on for seconds, maybe minutes, maybe hours. I didn't know how the time was passing. For me, time didn't exist at that moment. I tried to go under my blanket and hope this ended soon, but due to the constant ringing of the phone I couldn't. Not could I reach for my blanket. After a while I turned my head, and as soon as I realized I could turn my head, I jumped off my bed with the blanket, slipped and fell down. Because of the blanket at my feet, hit my head onto my dad's room, jumped and landed on top of my dad. I think I might have hit my dad in the balls because of how he woke up screaming. He asked me what happened. I was quiet and he hugged me for a while, and then he got up, went to the sofa, and I with him like a puppy, and switched on the TV and watched a movie, and I clearly remember what we watched. It was a movie with Peter Parker. I mean Tobey Maguire, and he was a horse rider. Something like that. It was around 5 in the morning then. I've been getting sleep paralysis since I was little, and have commonly experienced both scary and normal episodes. I'm also a lucid dreamer, so once I did some research, I was able to master getting out of an episode after I realized it was fake. The scary part is that the quickest way out of an episode, for me, isn't to wake up, it's to fall back into a normal dream. So I'll breathe and get my body to relax enough to go back to sleep, and sometimes, when I'm too aware, that sends me into hour-long cycles of going in and out of episodes, and it feels like I might never actually wake up. I get the worst episodes when I get extremely stressed out from work, and it's always the same banshee/woman in black. During a particularly stressful workday in customer service, I fell asleep on my desk during break time and woke up to the distant sound of a woman crying. I'm paralyzed in my seat and my face is stuck facing forward. I see the familiar black morning dress with her face shrouded in black veil. She's getting nearer and nearer. She's going to kill me, just as her cold, dead hands are outstretched and ready to wring my neck. I regain movement in my lower body and crouch underneath my desk. She's gone now, but she won't stop coming for me. Only experienced it one time. I was having a dream where someone pinned me on the ground and was pushing their knee into my back. I woke up, opened my eyes, and still felt that person doing it. I almost immediately recognized it as sleep paralysis, so instead of being afraid, I was fascinated at what I was feeling. The feeling was so real. I then concentrated really hard, pushing myself out of the dreamlike state, and finally rolled over and sat up. I woke up and was completely unable to move. I started trying to move my left arm when I heard the sound of breathing coming from under my bed. There's an area under my bed where someone could fit. I was terrified. At this point I tried to move faster. The breathing only got louder and louder. Then, my arm shot up and the breathing stopped. I've had sleep paralysis, but never any of the associated hallucinations. For me, The most terrifying part is being conscious and awake, but unable to move, open your eyes, or even breathe. It's the ultimate feeling of claustrophobia, suffocating and being unable to even gasp for air. The worst was when this floating creature came through my ceiling and the only thing I could do was watch. I would say it looked like the skeletal projection or spirit, don't remember exactly what they were because it's been years, that Frodo in Lord of the Rings saw before he fell into the water, and slowly it descended towards me all the while calling me Littlefoot in a whisper over and over again. I had tightly squeezed my eyes closed, telling myself it was just a dream. When I opened my eyes it was gone. But when I blinked again, its face was an inch from mine before it screamed. I had sleep paralysis for a while in college, both before and after 9/11. Fighting it never seemed to help, just caused panic. So one night I decided to just relax and let whatever happened happen. I was greeted with a dream? Vision? Whatever. Of the Twin Towers burning and the sounds of wailing and screaming. Like a vision of hell. I started fighting again after that. I was suddenly sitting upright in my bed with a horrific wave of terror coming over me as I stared into my open wardrobe. There was this black shadow-like figure hunched and staring at me. I couldn't move. I was consumed with fear, wanting to scream but having this choking feeling in my throat. It wasn't a person but something demonic yet so real. All I recall after a while was that my body finally was able to lay back down but my eyes were still wide and fixated on the figure and I still couldn't find the ability to scream or move. I don't know what happened after but I felt scared for days on end. I recall calling my mother crying and not being able to explain what had happened. I didn't know what sleep paralysis was at that time. A few years back, I woke up every other night for a month. Every time the same vision, a dark slender shadow creeping its way into my room, trying to take me away. Screaming with my mouth open, no air coming out, watching as it grew closer and closer, until poof. Gone and my screams could be heard next door. I still get nightmares remembering the times I woke up. I've had sleep paralysis a few times after, each terrifying in its own right, but nothing like when I was a kid. Laying in bed knowing I was awake and hearing someone come down the stairs and thinking great, who's awake now? Then when the footsteps entered my room I realized I don't have stairs in my small one-bedroom apartment. I couldn't turn my head to see who entered my room but they sat down and started typing something on a typewriter. As I tried forcing my eyes open I could see a figure fixed to the ceiling staring down at me. When I was able to fully open my eyes it was all gone. I had my eyes closed and couldn't open them nor could I move. I felt hair dropping on my ear as if a girl with really long hair was slowly approaching her head against mine, just staring at me. I could sometimes hear her breathe. It lasted around 5 to 10 minutes, when I could finally move my whole body was sweating, freaky shit. So sleep paralysis has always triggered for me by being half woken up by something and then falling back asleep seemingly with my eyes open. The most terrifying example I remember was as a child my bedroom was by the garage door so whenever my dad would go out in the garage or simply check the door at night to see if it was locked I would hear it and see the light coming from under my door. So one night that happens and instead of falling asleep while looking at the light under the door I hear a stampede down the hallway and I hear little steps running across my floor as if thousands of mice came running in from under the door and I could feel them running all over me but couldn't move or scream or anything. Just had this huge buildup of adrenaline as if someone put a bug on you and told you not to move. Finally woke up and needless to say was all shook up. Hey. I never opened my eyes but I felt like something leaned towards me. Then I heard whispers from this weird deep voice. I didn't understand what it was saying but it freaked me out. A corner of the cover was hanging over the edge of the bed and something under the bed grabbed it and began pulling it off me very, very slowly. It was then I realized that I couldn't move and was unable to pull it back. I had been sleeping with another corner in my hand and now all of my will was focused on holding onto that corner as hard as possible. After a moment of tugging I could feel the thing under my bed getting angry and just as it got ready to crawl out from under the bed I woke up for real. I was almost 30 at the time and I usually have zero fear of the dark and want it pitch black when I'm sleeping but I had to sleep with the lights on for the rest of that night. Well, everything feels terrifying when you're actually in sleep paralysis so this might not sound really scary but it was. I've had several episodes of SP starting when I was in middle school but I've only seen an entity one time. Usually it's just a presence, something lurking right outside of my peripheral vision. Still feels terrifying. Anyway, I was laying on my back in bed like always and the room was totally dark. Then I realized something had moved to my doorway, to the right of the foot of my bed. I can't see anything because it's so dark, but I know it's there. That's usually where the dream ends for me. However, this time, the light in the hallway came on and I saw it for the first time. It was the shape of a tall older woman and she was holding something that had handles on both sides, like maybe a heavy casserole dish of some sort. But it was completely black. I couldn't make out any features of anything except for the outline and her pose/posture. She didn't move or speak. At this point the complete terror kicked in and I started struggling to scream and reach for my husband, but I obviously could do neither. Then I woke up. This was probably a year ago and I haven't seen her since. Twice in the past month, I've had what felt like I was being dragged off the bed, then finally blanket pulled off of me quickly. I'm looking straight up and I'm awake. I see a faint white see-through man hovering near my ceiling. Older man with long hair just staring at me. It was terrifying because I was fully conscious. When my body finally breaks free and is able to move, the image of him fades away. It was so real. I've never had this much detail and me legitimately being awake/perfect conscious vision. The second time a few days ago, my heart was pounding because it was the same face/man, which has never happened to me, plus I was fully conscious. He was mouthing words, he seemed very concerned. I struggled because body was asleep but forced out a "how are you?" I didn't feel scared because I stared for so long, but before that I was terrified. When he body finally woke up, the opaque man faded again. I think it's definitely my brain dreaming while awake. I'm a lucid dream and can control fairly well. Just last night I had a dream that I had taken some pills whilst on a night out and then woke up thinking that I was in hospital and totally paralyzed. Lay there trying to work out if it was real or not. Pretty scary. I saw a group of people, shadows, staring at me getting closer slowly. Then I saw my ex come into the room, and lay down next to me to nap. I kept yelling his name for help but I couldn't move my mouth and no sound escaped me. At a certain point I realized he had never even come home. In my dream, I heard weird clinking and crunching noises coming from my closet, like somebody was eating cereal or something. I asked, "Mom, are you eating cereal in my closet?" Because she was the only one home at the time. A bald, morbidly obese man in nothing but a diaper emerged. He said, "Nope. Just me. Mind if I sit here?" and climbed on top of my chest. I woke up unable to breathe or move for several seconds. I felt I was gonna die. I want to call my mother to let me face my father's side. But no voice could escape my throat. All I can feel is numbness, but my mind is awake. I don't know if this counts, but being in the stage of asleep and trying to get up while really sick. It feels like you are still dreaming and your skull is being crushed at the same time. Not fun. I have never actually seen anything during sleep paralysis, but it is scary in itself. Trying to wake myself up wasn't easy, but I managed. I have to basically try really hard to scrunch one side of my shoulder to touch the side of my neck/head. I twitch a couple times but eventually I'm up. Then I'm afraid to go back asleep. Mine were almost always someone evil entering into my apartment and trying to move or scream but not being able to. I used to have them daily, but I changed my pillow and sleep position and I don't get them anymore. I have this a lot if I sleep during the day and try to force myself to sleep during the night again. Actually, it's not that horrifying after a while. You get used to the creepy shadows and that everything seems slightly off. What's really unpleasant is that you want to move your body but that you can't and that you feel like you can't breathe. I usually try really hard to move my body and get really frustrated, but after what feels like a few minutes, no idea how long it takes in real life, it's over and I usually don't get it again during the same night. I tried to manipulate my dreams sometimes but it's not working that well. I would feel myself getting lifted and dragged out my bed. I couldn't move or do anything. There was also whispering in my ear about how they are going to kill me. This would happen 3 times a night before it stopped completely. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.